Welcome to the first of the BLS, the British Lymphology Society's webinars for Lymphoedema Awareness Month 2026. Thank you for joining us today. My name is Yolanda Borthwick. I'm one of the co-chairs of BLS. I would like to thank Nicole Faccio for leading today's session, and she's going to be giving her insight into how she makes lymphedema work for her. After the presentation, there'll be a live question and answer session with Nicole, and we're also really lucky to be joined by Karen Freet from the Lymphoedema Support Network. Please post any questions you have in the chat box, and we'll try and get through as many as possible. And I'll just hand over to Nicole now.
Hello. I hope everybody's doing great. Thanks for joining. Good afternoon, good evening, good morning, depending on where you're joining from. I want to say thank you for joining and very excited to open this up with a patient perspective. Maybe a few of you have already joined some of my previous sessions that are about my story and my journey. But this one, it's a bit different today. And it's about from diagnosis to daily life, Lymphie style. How did I take the information that was given to me at diagnosis and then turn that into action? The person I am today is because of all that. And I think the best place to start is to acknowledge that lymphedema is much more than swelling. Lymphedema is a chronic illness, which means that it affects not only your body, but your relationships, your daily life, your identity, your decisions, your planning, your job. Where do you go on holiday? Starting from this premise, we need to realize that there is a lot of components that make the adjustments of what lymphedema is in your day-to-day. But before I go into that, what qualifies me to talk about this? Well, my name is Nicole. Hi, I think my face is on top of my name. And I was born with what's known as primary lymphedema, which means that I have lymphedema from potentially congenital reasons. And I've had the diagnosis of lymphedema since around 6 to 9 months old. That's me there in the pictures when I was a little kid. I have experienced many complications that come with the condition, and I've lived in many places, not necessarily because of lymphedema, but because I am from the Caribbean, from an island called Puerto Rico. So I lived in the United States after I moved to London. And through all those life movements, I've navigated a lot of healthcare systems as well. And all that collective information that also came with a lot of trials and tribulations is what I have and I've used to manage my condition. But it's also shaped a lot of the perspective that I bring today. There was a moment in time that I really negated the treatment, the options that I was given by healthcare professionals all around the world. Many of you might know me as Facialita. The only time that I accept to be called influencer is with the term Lympfluencer, because this is the persona that you might see online, adapting my life with compression and lymphedema and trying to kind of portray how do I live my life with it, not against it, in a quite positive fashion of what I try to do, because positivity is a day-to-day decision and that's how I decide to present myself. So where I want to start this trajectory of the next few minutes is at this point of diagnosis versus reality. I think we cannot forget that the diagnosis journey of lymphedema is quite complicated. It's quite loaded because it's not straightforward. Most people go very long months, years towards decades without being diagnosed, which creates a whole different feelings about the condition itself. But let's say that you have a quite decent, straightforward diagnosis. When you get diagnosed, then you feel you have knowledge, right? And that's great. And let's say that you were giving a set of tools and information. You feel at that moment that you all of a sudden then you found the fountain of lymphedema youth. You found what it's gonna make your life better. That's not the full reality of what your swelled life will bring. And like any story in this world, the expectations versus reality are quite different. Because at the moment of diagnosis, we expect it to go quite straightforward. Okay, I got a diagnosis. Now my life is going to be like this. I'll do a few things here and there. I'll drink a tea or I take a pill and everything is going to go away. But the reality with chronic illness, which is important for us to remind ourselves, is that the journey is quite complicated. And there's still quite straightforward to suggest that you're going to get to B and then there's not going to be another knot. Uh, there are multiple knots along the way. I'm very, very honest. I've had the condition for almost 40 years and I still go through those not moments from time to time. I also don't want to tell you guys that I have everything figured out because I don't. But I've been through fair enough of those complex reality moments to give you a bit of advice of how it's felt and how have I taken that on board. And a diagnosis tells you a lot of things medically, a lot of things factually. And those are, first of all, that you need to wear compression. And some of the other ones, words that probably we don't want to hear, but they're real and we have to accept them and we have to face them head on. For example, that there's no cure, that it's chronic, that you're going to have swelling forever. They tell you words like primary lymphedema or secondary lymphedema or management. And all of these are very important informational words, but it doesn't really communicate the reality of what you're going to face. So, in reality, what it doesn't tell you is that when you get home, you start facing yourself with a lot of things that don't make much sense or you haven't heard before, a lot of logistics, a lot of swelling, and in some cases swelling in other parts that you were not expecting or you didn't think that you could get because that happens a lot. A lot of discomfort, a lot of challenges with garments. It's not as straightforward as wear compression, here they are. The whole world of garments is quite overwhelming, which one to pick. They don't fit well, they're uncomfortable. I don't think they sometimes control my swelling. You might have the wrong garments on. You start seeing other things happening like your skin is dry and you can't control it. How do I do that? What is it all of this for? Which ends up in quite an overwhelmed feeling. And not to demean to make it lesser, but lack of confidence. It's only one pop-up because I couldn't accommodate more pop-ups in this slide, but it's one of the other mental components that exist in a diagnosis like for lymphedema. So there is that moment in which you are in a crossroads because you're giving that diagnosis and you go back home and you're like, oh my God, I'm overwhelmed. What do I do? And you're faced with a basic moment in life, potentially, or several moments in life in which you can either ignore the problem or do something about it. And I, like many other patients, don't want to accept the reality, not because I don't want it, is that a lot of it seemed very inconvenient and it still seems very inconvenient, but I can say that it works. But without enough reinforcement of things that work and without enough reinforcement of how to adapt your life or how to incorporate all those things that sound quite restrictive because all the guidance around lymphedema is quite restrictive, it's easier to go down the path of ignoring the problem. And that's what I did. I went through that crossroads and found myself that it was easier to ignore the problem. And then, there was a wrong decision and there is the right decision of doing something about it. Um, Today is not about telling you all the problems that appeared in my life because trying to ignore the problem, but I can tell you that I'm here to tell the story and I can tell you how did I do something about it. And before I go into my suggestions or my nuggets of information, I want to be very clear. In order for you to get to that place in which you accept that there are tools that you can use and that there are things you can do about it, you have to detach yourself from what I'm calling the magic pill theory, which kind of suggests that there is something magical or something that all of a sudden will get rid of the swelling, that there will be this cure that would just take it all away. Although wishful thinking is a great thing, and I am quite a positive person, I'm also quite a realist, and the magic pill does not exist. The magic pill is a combination of things. It's not one thing, and it is a lifestyle change. But unfortunately, there isn't that thing that you can take to make it all go away. Even the surgeries that exist do require some maintenance, even if you undergo them. So that is kind of reality check number one. Now, how did the shift happen from doing nothing to basically doing something? And the first thing was mindset shift. And I struggled a little bit of putting together this presentation, not because I struggle with what we're talking about here, is because it suggests again that there was something magical that happened or that I was born with this like random knowledge of things or like this positive way of thinking. I did not, right? I was in that crossroads and I faced very negative things, very head on and um very big reality checks. And if I didn't take this seriously, then I was not giving myself a fair chance. And I had tools and I was being given tools, so it was up to me to put them in practice. But I had to change my mind across what compression meant. What was it for? I thought that compression was only for inside the house because I didn't want to wear it outside the house. I thought that I um only needed bandages every now and then. Only like I also thought that if I went to sleep, my swelling would go away because when I was younger, it was more resilient, the swelling. But none of that was really materially true. It was stories I was telling myself because I have very negative feelings and perceptions about anything lymphedema and anything that had to do with its treatment. So, first of all, I had to learn or relearn the treatment basics. And in that shift of mindset, that was another very important key point. Um, Learning them and incorporating them. And with that, understanding that even if I had treatment that somebody else did, although it would be ideal that we all get treatment unlimited whenever we wanted it and whenever we needed it, it's at the moment in time it's not realistic. There are no resources in the UK or anywhere in the world. It's quite expensive in other parts of the world. So self-management, using those treatment basics for self-management was the key. I had to put my part in the game and my um I had to take control of it myself within my environment. And last but not least, it was a test and learn approach. Um, I've used a lot of things that have not worked. I've developed a lot of resistance of trying new things because of how many things did not work. But it was also about testing and learning how I was told to use a lot of the products or a lot of the things. Because maybe for example, bandaging, which is the state of the art, and I love to do it. It is quite inconvenient at times for day-to-day use, and there is a guidance that says that you should sleep on them, but it's very hard for me to sleep on them. So it was about like, what if I do this in a different way? And when I'm at home, I do it during the day and sleep, and I have a very good night's sleep. And that's the type of test and learn and adapting that I've had to incorporate in order to create my life. Now, what does designing my lymphedema life looks like, or what are the components of it? So, if I were to describe this in a very succinct manner, it's probably three pillars. So, number one is designing my life with treatment, with those self-management, with that treatment protocols that I was told and learning them myself for myself in the way that they work for me. Number two is redefining myself and my identity with all of that, particularly with compression. Um, Although I was born with lymphedema, I had many, many instances of my diagnosis having more stuff in it. When I was born, my swelling was present in my left arm particularly, but then it got worse in my legs and in my feet and in my abdomen and my face. So at every moment in life, I had to redefine myself, and therefore, um, where would I grab myself to get that confidence? And last but not least, a mental calibration. So I'll go into each of these in a bit more detail. But my life with treatment was about finding my rhythm. And there are, and again, three things that we can talk about here and many others, but it was about creating realistic routines. One thing I really struggled was what I was told on paper, again, on that diagnosis, what I needed to do, and in reality, what I could, because I wanted to work, and I have a career, and I wanted to go out with friends, and I wanted to go out on holiday, and I wanted to, when I was young, I went to university and school and to travel with my friends. And in order to adjust everything that I needed to do, it was about not necessarily creating a strict routine that incorporated all these things. It was about how the routine adapted to me. And that takes a lot of time. But that is also about the word realistic. Because it's like everyone signs up for the gym every January and then it doesn't stick, right? Because we said we're gonna go to the gym every day. So sometimes we cannot be so absolute, and it's about finding the moment and the consistency that actually works for us. And that's why the second one says consistency over perfection, because it wasn't about every day, all the time. Those are very absolute words. Those, and they, although at a moment of inspiration, they sound great. I want to bandage myself every single day, but it's unrealistic because I am tired at times, because sometimes my skin doesn't cannot tolerate it. Sometimes in my hormonal cycle, I actually don't tolerate the bandages. And sometimes I just cannot be bothered on a Sunday because I just want to rest. And that's okay too. But designing that routine that works on the good days, on the bad days, made myself feel better because it wasn't about the absolute. It was about like celebrating the moments of win. That might mean that doing what worked for me mean using products in ways that other people had not seen, and I had to become creative. I like to think of Lymphedema as a arts and crafts project, and sometimes it is. And sometimes it's using products and things not necessarily that have lymphedema on the tin, because they're not necessarily made for lymphedema, but they could work, like little compression shorts, etc. One thing that is a non-negotiable, though, is compression. Compression, in all ways, all days, is how can you have compression at all times or as much as possible, not trying to use limiting language, within your life. The next one is redefining my identity and confidence, which as a subtopic is finding myself again. And that meant that I needed to incorporate compression, right? Compression, 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 but making it part of me, because I really had a very negative opinion about compression and how it looked or what it was for. Particularly, I had to redefine what compression was in my brain. I don't call them sorcery anymore because that suggests is underwear. So I remember when I started kind of posting about my garments and about lymphedema, and there were people that had like a reaction of like, oh my God, you're like exposing yourself. And I was not exposing anything. If anything, I'm totally covered. So that's because there was this, I believe, notion that it was underwear, and it's not, right? Is a mobility aid, is something that a lot of us need to live our life. And I had to then redefine my style, how what I used as clothes versus what I thought I needed to wear. Clothes are made to fit our bodies, not for our bodies to fit clothes. So it wasn't only about compression, it was probably a very bad relationship with my body image. Um, and utilizing compression in color really changed that for me. But I had to change my perception of compression, all in all, what I was saying before. It was a mindset. Then owning my body as it was. And a lot of people struggle with showing their garments or compression because of what other people might say in the street or stairs. And those are very true. I've had those moments myself a lot. And I remember when I was living in New York City and I would just hold on to the handrails of the subway, and because otherwise I would fall, but then people would be staring at my hand and I really didn't like it. I also realized that I don't owe anything to strangers. And if they want to stare, they can stare because ultimately I'm taking care of myself. And there's a story behind it. And if they're willing to hear the story, I'm very happy to tell the story. It says much more about the other person than about yourself if you have to stare at somebody and if you don't like differences. And I did owe everything to myself and health and maintaining myself in a good state. So if that was to show my garments and bandages for that reason now, I will. And not only owning my body, accepting my body because I was showing up as myself and not anybody else. You have to change a lot of how you perceive yourself within the world and the world in itself, because it can be a cruel place, but it can be a beautiful place. It depends on how you decide to perceive it. And 100% I get stares, 100% I get different treatment potentially at times, but I just don't give too much energy to that. And giving too much energy to the negativity and what I felt was wrong in me was not getting me anywhere. I know that I have swelling in 75% of my body and I have many, many, many other situations happening. I was born with many other attributes, and it took me a very long time to say that and to get to that place and to also look around me and see that how is it that so many people hate themselves or hate their bodies? So it wasn't only me that was going through those trials and tribulations again. So accepting my body was a huge thing, and the body that I was giving and the cards that I was dealt. And last but not least, all of this kind of cherry on top with a mental calibration, which was about finding the balance. None of this is easy. None of this is, again, a magic pill, but it was about measuring my progress the way that progress is defined for me. And for example, I was told for so long that my one of my legs was like 150% larger than the other, or that my arm was I don't know how much percentage larger than the other. That was not useful because then that in my brain made the measurement of success that both of my arms needed to be the same size. And the reality is that would never be the case. That would never happen. That I would never be, I'm not going to have symmetric body because I have chronic swelling and I cannot get rid of the chronic. That's not possible. My measurements of success were definitely different, and my measurements of what success looked like for me were not what potentially normal was. Accepting my different version of normal, something that was quite cathartic as a moment, because I realized once I told my story that a lot of people resonated with it, not because they had lymphedema, just because they also had different versions of normal, that the standard definition of normal doesn't really exist. And last but not least, it was acknowledging that Sometimes it was difficult, and it's not about pushing the difficult moments away because it's impossible, but not really getting stuck in it. So, not really living in the pity party, not really living in feeling sorry for myself, although there are moments I do and I overwhelm, but not really getting stuck in there. Now, to round this up, I can say that there is this way one magic pill, and it's not magic. Like I said at the beginning, it's a collection of things that you can do to improve your lymphatic system, which in turn will improve your lymphedema. And these are basic things. And I swear they work, and I swear that they are the foundations of how you're going to be better in your health in general. And that definitely is about loving your lymphatic system and the things that the lymphatic system respond positively towards. No matter how you got lymphedema, through cancer or through primary ways like I have, these four components will help you in your lymphedema journey 100%. And definitely compression, number one, is one that we cannot ignore. It's the top pillar of taking care of lymphedema, but it's also about nurturing your body, your mind, and moving. And in the past, I've collected these in a series of 9 principles that I call the Facilita Brilliant Basics, which is the 9 components of what I've incorporated in my life to improve my health, let's say. And there's some very basic things there like moving, exercising, hydrating yourself well, eating well, maintaining a good weight, and definitely sleeping and resting, one that is definitely overlooked. You can go into my social media channels to learn more about them, and then there's a blog out there that you can read more about what these are. And I want to close this off by saying that although lymphedema is part of my daily life now, today it is still, like I said in the beginning, more than swelling, and it is much more than swelling, but it's transformed into knowledge much more than the limitations I thought it was at a moment in time. It is about normal adjustments. And this is a realization that I got to that eventually I named my podcast as, because it was a quite cathartic moment when I realized that I wasn't alone in everything I was experiencing. I And not only because of lymphedema, if not, a lot of people resonated with the stories I have to say or my challenges because of something they were going through, not necessarily only chronic swelling, not only about how do I incorporate compression in my life, but it was about understanding that we as humans have been told that the norm is something. The norm is not that. It is much more common, all the adjustments that we all have to do to live life, regardless if it is from health or for any of the multiple other sources that life is composed of. And that the reality is that the adjustments to live that life are the ones that are much standard. And there's no real standard way of describing normal. Therefore, don't feel you're alone in those journeys of trying to find what works for you. I promise from the bottom of my heart that anything that you experience, particularly in this case with lymphedema, other people do experience, whether that is challenges with finding shoes or challenges with your hormones and your swelling. I get more swelling when I'm in my hormone days, and 100% that is common across the board, but maybe a lot of people don't talk about it. And that's what I do to try to shed some light in some of the things that I experience and make them relatable. Because it's not great to feel that you're alone, and I can say that you are not. And with that, we're closing today. And thank you for listening. I hope that was useful. I hope that I was able to shed some light or provide some useful information. I'm in the social media channels as Facilita, TikTok and Instagram as the primary channels. And thanks so much for listening, and I'll see you soon. Bye.
Thank you so much for that, Nicole. That was really helpful and great to have your insight and also your honesty with it all. Lots of comments in the chat saying to thank you for it. So brilliant. We have got some questions, and please, if anyone has any extra questions, just put them in the chat. I'll just kick off with the first one that came in. But what makes it easier or harder to wear your compression regularly? Probably Nicole, that's a question for yourself. Lovely to have you, Karen, as well. Now you're on camera. Thank you for joining us.
Hi everyone. Hi Karen. Hi John. Thank you. What makes it easier? I don't think look wearing your compression in the morning is the best decision you're gonna do for the rest of the day. And that's the thought that I that I do the moment I wake up. And I woke up this morning at 6 a.m. and I didn't really want to wear my compression. So I'm not wearing my garment right now, but it's here right next to me to put it on because I've been out for like I don't know, an hour. But I did put my like garments, and that's the best decision I knew I was gonna do because otherwise I'm gonna suffer if I don't do that decision in that moment. Um, so it's those little moments of reminding yourself of the benefits and the long-term benefits that those decisions, I call it micro decisions, have in your life. Um, I remember I call it the non-wear my compression dance. Particularly, for example, in a day on holiday or like on a summer day of like that day, like, you wake up, you're dreading, it's hot outside, and you're like, I'm not gonna wear the garment, and then suffering through that whole day because I didn't do it. Um, and then the next day really suffering the consequences because as we know the swelling just doesn't go away, it doesn't disappear. So learning from my mistakes, very honest, and then I'm just paying it forward so that you learn from mine. I'm telling you that there are benefits of making that decision in the morning.
That's brilliant. Thank you. Who do you turn to for support if you need support? Who do you go to?
Oh my God, that's a great one. I have a great support system. I'm thankful for that. And when I say that not necessarily composed of people with lymphedema. It's yeah, my friends, family have been around. Not everyone in your life is going to understand what you go through, and that's real. And a lot of people struggle with n not necessarily feeling they have the support system. There is a case in which us as patients of anything, right? In this case, of lymphedema, have to educate others, and that's a role that we'll probably have to always play. And it's not hard. It's not easy. Sorry, it's probably the hardest one because you just want to be understood. But it's real. And but regardless of that, it's not what you say, it's how you say it. I love that saying. And if you tell people nicely and kindly and educating people, then you get the same back. And um with open honesty and vulnerability, people do respond positively the majority of times. So, but like I said in the whole presentation, that's not something that you just flip that switch that you do, right? It takes time, energy, and effort to get there, but it pays off. But yeah, like everyone else, I have a circle of people, and then eventually along the way, finding good clinicians that were people that I could turn to, and over time, also creating a community of other people that we just share the experiences and what's ugly and not that glamorous or not glamorous at all about swelling. I have lots of lymphedema friends that say lymphedema is boring, and it is true. It is. But it's sometimes having that self-deprecating moment is also positive and good to um, discuss with other people like you, right? Having the same challenges of buying shoes.
Yeah, thanks. And Karen, obviously you're in touch with many people living with lymphedema through the Lymphedema Support Network. So can you give some of your insights to how people find support? What's the any tips or helps you can put for our patients that our healthcare professionals that are in the audience today as well?
I think the two things that really strike me time and time again are exactly what Nicole just said, is that you need support as an individual, as a human, that's you. So that might be friends, family, it might be via online, Facebook, any of those sort of things. And I think then you need the two tiers of having a healthcare professional that you trust, wherever that lives, whether that lives in your GP surgery or in your lymphedema clinic, but also having the ability to connect with other people who might just understand where you're going from. And often our helpline, the first time people call us, the relief in their voice at finding somebody who's even heard of lymphedema is immeasurable. And quite often the first phone calls are just 20 minutes of letting people decompress all the things that they've wanted to say to someone who might just understand. And I think one of the important things, Nicole has been on a journey, and she's traversed that journey for a very long time, and she's amazingly successful at it. And if you have someone like Nicole saying it's tough, be consistent, you'll get there, is really, really a valuable thing for people to hear, because when you're first diagnosed, you've never heard of the condition, your family have never heard of the condition, your GP has never even heard of the condition. Sometimes it can be really isolating. And for those practitioners who are on today's webinar, I think one of the things that we hear time and time again is that actually, and there's research to support this, the size of somebody's swelling has no correlation to how they feel about that swelling. So somebody could have really, really, really large limbs and be coping just fine. And other people could have a tiny, tiny swelling. I remember a lady I met who had gynae cancer and had a tiny, tiny amount of abdominal swelling. I couldn't even see it. It was that tiny, but to her, it was devastating. And I think, if nothing else, just remember that the how somebody presents to you physically might not be how they're feeling mentally, is a really important message to take away.
Thank you, that's really valuable. I'm just looking at my list for other questions. So one of the questions that came in, Nicole, for yourself is, how regularly do you self-bandage, and how long do you keep on the bandages when you do?
So I try to do it as often as I can, and that is a very loose statement. And the
It's quite
reason I say
realistic,
that
isn't
is,
it, though?
yeah, well, I just said it in the presentations about realistic routines. Um, and that can vary. If I would need to take a rule of thumb, potentially twice a week, let's what I really can realistic fit in my schedule. There are weeks that is more, there are weeks that is none, right? I think that's the important thing of lymphedema is compression all days in all ways, and that can look in many different ways. And um, not here to particularly promote exact products because it's about giving guidance, but there are wrapping systems that can help you in days that you're experiencing more swelling besides your garments, right? Again, the garments are non-negotiable. But if you have issues putting on your garments, because that also happens, then there are the wrapping systems that you can go to help in compression and are hard, easier to use and put on. There are night garments like the Comfy Wedge, which I love, and those are extremely good aids. I'm actually wearing it right now. There and that's why I don't like to limit myself from the products, is how do you incorporate those products in your life. But if it's bandaging as the component, I try minimum twice or three times a week. I try to create my weekends predominantly around it and the days that I work remote around it. So I've tried to make a routine in which I bandage in the morning in the days I work at home, and therefore I take the benefit of the bandage the whole day. And if I want to take it off at night because I want to have a better night's sleep and not intervene in my sleep, then I take it off. But at least I took advantage of the bandage potentially 14 hours, and that's a great successful day, right? The guidance says that you have to have bandaging close to 24 hours. I wouldn't guide myself through that, because then if you don't, it's better for you to get advantage of compression as bandaging for 2-3 hours than no time at all. So those are like these type of different nuggets of mindset shifts that you have to do to accept sometimes a quite uncomfortable device like bandaging.
Yeah, that's really helpful as well. And I think it is, again, it's that back to the realistic, isn't it? It's, finding what will work for you and how the
Mhm.
best way to use things. I'm just having a look here. Are there any financial or practical barriers that make treatment difficult? And again, Karen, you might be able to help coming in with that from your experience from the.
I'd certainly, for those people who are listening in the UK, it can be a challenge because the NHS sort of says, broadly speaking, as far as your basic compression is concerned, you get two items of compression every 6 months. So you wear one and you wash one. And obviously you can buy more to bulk that up. But for some people, that can be a financial limitation, which is a struggle because often, people think they see, Nicole, or they see other influencers. I know Nicole doesn't love that word, but who maybe have got a wider variety of colors or a wider variety of things that they're able to use. But we often say to people, sometimes it's about investing in your health. It's about investing in your wellness, and that can be really, really important. So yes, they are really expensive, but the LSN has got discount codes with a lot of companies. Lymphoedema United, Matt's company, has got lots of discount codes and things like that can be used as well. But yeah, there are financial implications. But I think one of the really, really important thing is to just be a bit bold and a bit brave, to just say to yourself, okay, I'm going to try a different color this time when I get my prescription. I'm going to try a different this, a different that. Then it can be really, really helpful just to suck it and see it isn't for everyone. And the other thing I would say is be encouraging to each other. Sometimes it surprises me, and it shouldn't. We're all human, but sometimes it surprises me that when we'll do a patient experience story in Lympheline or something, or on Facebook, patients will come back and say, "Oh, well, that's fine for you, but your lymphedema isn't as bad as mine," or "That's fine for you, but you're young. You don't live with this. You don't live with that." So again, for those people who are living with lymphedema, I would just encourage you to encourage each other in the community, and we can all be guilty of maybe not being as encouraging as we should be to each other.
Thank you, Karen. That's a good point.
I wanted to add to
Sorry,
something
yeah,
that
Nicole.
sorry, I just wanted to add something that Karen said that was important. The financial burden is 100% of lymphedema exists. There's no hiding about it. Thankfully, in the NHS, we do get some Karen said, um garments on the system, and that is a great advantage, but it doesn't solve all the problems that we don't really have availability of treatment as we could or should, or who can define what that perfect care would look like. But and it is true that not many people have the ability to expand more than those garment allocation. But I have to say that one thing that was interesting was I was willing to give money for many things in life, and that potentially were not a priority or were not as important. So if I would put that money away for an extra garment that was 50, 100 quid extra in a year, then that is more beneficial to a long-term gain than anything else. And that, again, it's a mindset shift, but that's my own nugget back to that is that money will always pay off its benefits.
Thanks, Nicole. We're running out of time, so there's one question that's been posted just a couple of times. So one of the participants on the call today just said that I hadn't seen you in social using compression therapy machines like Lymphopress. Do you have any thoughts? And second, what type of exercises do you do? Do you lift weights?
So the exercise question first, I'm gonna answer. Definitely do exercise, and I do a little bit of everything. Do I do spinning. I have a spinning bike. I do Pilates. I'm currently in a Pilates run, reformer Pilates I love. Um, Anything that is core exercises and would encourage the massaging, natural massaging of your body, of the core lymphatics, and breathing, like yoga and Pilates, is extremely beneficial. The important thing is to wear your compression. If you're exercising without your compression, you're actually potentially doing not that great of a benefit towards your lymphatic system, because you need that wall around your limb to then have the effect of what the muscles do to your lymphatic system. So please, 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 if you exercise, use your compression. I do a lot of lifting weights as well. So I do a little bit of everything. Whatever I don't do is because I don't have the best of abilities with my with my exercising. Never been I'm a very exercisey human like other people in the community, which are, athletes. I'm not. Um, so I would say just venture yourself out to whatever you feel comfortable, and it's not about exercise, it's about movement. Even walking is extremely good. Just schedule yourself to have a walk of a few kilometers a day, and that should be fine. In terms of the compression machines, I don't have compression machine pumps. That is for a particular reason. I don't think there are necessarily a problem if your healthcare professional have prescribed them to you and you're using one and you feel it works with your care. Unfortunately, there are um what's the word contra uh
Contraindications?
Indications.
contraindications with my type of lymphedema, which is because my lymphedema is from genetic sources, so my whole lymphatic system is compromised. So sometimes it's not as beneficial as for other people to use the machines, and your healthcare professional will advise you for it. But I do have a lot of lymphedema friends that use their machines on their routines, and then they just sit in front of the TV, do their little routine, and then go on with their day or do it at night. So I don't see a problem as long as your healthcare professional have assessed it.
Thank you. And the very last question that we'll just squeeze in is, how do you manage extra swelling during hormone fluctuations?
Oh, great question. Not very well. I think I just wear sometimes extra uh, buffers, let's say. So in a day that I've had my period and I particularly feel my legs way heavier. And when I say heavier, like harder, so more fibrotic, definitely. And therefore, like I feel that they're bigger. So I wear sometimes the wrapping system on top of my flat knit compression just to give that extra. And to be fair, those are days that I actually then just try to prioritize rest if possible, because eventually, the my period will go away and then I won't have that extra burden in my body. So I think it's just knowing that you're gonna have more swelling in those days, and then the days after, then you probably can deal with that and then do like a bit be more on top of it, do more bandaging or more self-care to then eliminate the extra burden that had in your body. But I don't think there is a way of like not feeling that extra weight. Very honest. It's just what it is.
Thank you. Karen, I think we need to close up now. So Karen, have you anything else you would like to add as a comment before?
No, just thanks to Nicole as ever. Wonderful, wonderful to hear her. I'm just putting on the chat. If anyone's got questions, that obviously that Nicole can't answer everyone's personal questions, but the LSM might be able to give some insight. Then I'm going to put my email in the chat. So if there's questions that haven't been answered today
Brilliant.
that you would like answered from a patient perspective, please do get in touch. We're always glad to help.
Thank you so much. That's brilliant. I think to just finish up, just to say thank you again to both Nicole and Karen. And that was really excellent session, and it was great to speak to you both. And thank you for answering so many questions. The webinars can be rewatched. There'll be a link sent out to you so you can catch up with that. For those who might be interested, the registration for the BLS study days, the ones being held at Bristol and Chester this year, are now both open. And you can find the information for that on the BLS website. And the next webinar is on World Lymphedema Day on Friday, the 6th of March. And it's Professor Christiana Gordon who'll be explaining about lymphedema and why we treat it in the way that we do. So thank you all again for joining us, and thank you again for our presenters, and have a great day and enjoy the rest of Lymphedema Awareness Month. Please let us know what you're up to. But thank you very much.